What's up, my name is AFROBEATs and today I'm going to show you how to create an Afrobeat from scratch. Let's get started. In the last couple of years, the Afrobeat genre has really become something mainstream, with artists like Joeboy, Oxlade, and lately artists from the United States are also hopping on this genre, and right now some of these songs are ranking in the charts. So this genre is for sure becoming more mainstream. But most of the amazing artists which bring that typical Afrobeat sound are coming from Nigeria. And in this video I'm going to show you how to create a beat capturing that sound. And also many more artists from Nigeria are rocking it worldwide right now. So in this video I'm going to show you step by step how to create an Afrobeat from scratch, showing you all the elements you need to know about making those beats. So let's get started. Step 1, drums. So when it comes to creating the drums, there are multiple ways how to approach creating a drum loop. But when it comes to listening to Afrobeat, it's all about adding a lot of dynamics, percussions, and just adding groove and rhythm. Most of the Afrobeats are created between 95 and 105 BPM. In this video I'm going to create a beat in 98 beats per minute. And if you're creating an Afrobeat in FL Studio, I highly recommend you're not creating the beat in the channel rack using the step sequencer, but you're enabling the piano roll. And if you draw in your drum loop into the piano roll, it's much easier to add way more dynamics to your drum loop. In this video I'm going to use my Afrobeats Infinity drum kit, and the drums which I'll be using in this tutorial will be available for free. So there will be a link in the description. So definitely go and check it out if you want to follow along with the tutorial. So we're adding a kick every step. And right now you could pick a snare or a rim shot. And in most of the cases you're adding a triplet rhythm. So we have those 2 steps, so we have 1, 2. And then we're dividing this one into 3 notes. So we have this rhythm. And in Afrobeat you could add variations on this rhythm. For example, this one. But right now, for example, it bends a little bit to Amapiano. But for this beat, this rhythm is totally fine. Then we're adding a shaky loop. So those are the basics when it comes to building an Afrobeat drum loop. And right now we're building further on this drum loop. So we're adding a lot of percussive elements which contain a lot of high frequencies and mid frequencies. So for example, more wooden percussion and toms. We're also chopping up a shaky loop. So this is the most general shaky loop which is used in Afrobeat. If you're listening to Afrobeats from 2018 to 2022, most of the beats are containing this shaky loop. But make sure you are creative and chop it up into something like this. Creating a totally different groove. Then we're adding more and more percussions. And for example, a sample like this. And this makes it sound way more spacious and dynamic. So when creating an Afrobeat drum loop from scratch, make sure to add around 10 to 15 elements, play around with the rhythm, be creative, and use these tricks. So for example, I've added this wooden percussion, and this is exactly the same rhythm as the rim, but I've dragged it a little bit off beat. So you could do this by selecting a line, and then just zoom in. And right now play around with the whole loop. So right now it sounds like this, sounds flat. And then we're dragging it a little bit to the right. Just makes it a little bit more unique. And then of course press Option R and then select bipolar and play around with the velocity. So not all the percussion samples are played at the same level, because when you're playing a percussion in real life you don't hit the percussive sound at the same force every time. So make sure to randomize it by simply adjusting the velocity button. And this makes the whole drum loop sound way groovier and more dynamic. And when I found out this trick, I instantly improved my Afrobeats. And the next final thing is to add some swing. So open up the channel rack and I play around with the main swing of the whole beat. And I usually add around 15 to 25% of swing to an Afrobeat. And this just adds an insane amount of groove and prevents your beat from sounding too sequenced. Step 2. Adding the melodies. In Afrobeat, a guitar is an element which is often used, combining with some simple plug and a simple electric piano. And all those sounds should sound dynamic, maybe push a little bit to the background so there is a lot of room for the vocals. And I was doing the research on this genre. I found out a lot of those beats are soul and funk inspired. So if you're looking for some music theory which you could apply into those beats, definitely go and take a look at those genres. And in most of the cases, those are layered with saxophone samples or trumpet samples, so real live samples. And this is something which can make your beat sound so unique. And I'm also going to show you this in this video. So in this beat, I've used Contact, I used the Electric Mint, and I used the muted preset, so it sounds really plucky and sharp. And I've also created this beat in C minor, and I've created this melody. So I've added those default effects. Without it sounds like this. With it sounds like this. Just makes it sound way more smoother. And then I've linked it to a mixer bus, using EQ to remove the low and high frequencies. At the chorus dimension D, just use a slight bit of parallel tube compression and then just a little bit more reverb. So without those effects. And with the effects. So as you can hear, by adding effects like this, keep it simple and you create a way more spacious sound. And also make sure the main sound like this doesn't sound too harsh. And because the drums also contain a lot of peaking transients, you want to make sure the main melody is way more softer and in the background, because otherwise there is just too much going on. Then I've created a second layer using the Mini Freak. On this sound, I've also added some chorus to make it sound way softer. I've used this delay tape and used this preset. In most of the cases, those plucks sounds really harsh. And you definitely want to avoid some harsh and annoying frequencies when listening to a beat. So I've used this dynamic EQ to reduce the notes which are sounding annoying. So as you can see, when a high annoying frequency is coming up, it will get crushed by the EQ. So you can create something like this. Right mouse button and then select Make Dynamic. And then this arrow right here. And then just add this one at the frequency which you don't like. And in the end, this will make your mix sound way much better. And it's just very pleasant to listen to. And then I've also added some stereo separation because I want the guitar to sound in the middle, a little bit more mono, and the plucks on the side. So I've added this stereo separation, which I've created myself. And I inverse it, as you can see. So we're basically panning to the left and to the right at different frequencies. And then we're doing exactly the same using another EQ. So right now the sound is spread to the side. So without the effects, with the effects, just sounds way friendlier and easy to listen to. So when we combine the drums and the melodies, it sounds like this. Step 3, the bass line. In Afrobeat, the bass line isn't that complicated at all. You could use a bass guitar, a simple saw. Some of the people are just using toms or percussive sounds to create the bass line. It doesn't matter that much as long as you don't add too much. So adding a huge 808 isn't the way to go. So I would recommend you're using a soft bass. So I've created this bass from scratch, and it's just pretty simple how to create something like this. You could do the same thing in all other VSTs. So for example, pick an analog shape. So I'm going to pick the analog dB sine. I'm going to enable oscillator B and pick exactly the same sine. Then I'm pitching this one down 2 octaves and this one 1 octave. So right now I'll play the sound in C, and right now it contains a lot of mid frequencies. And we're adding mid frequencies because we're adding this one 1 octave higher than oscillator A. So right now just reduce the level right here. That's it, keep it very simple. So this is a simple bass line, and then envelope 1. Then we want the bass line to duck a little bit. So add a little bit of attack, so we don't want any clicking or popping sounds, and a little bit of release. Then we're adding a little bit of distortion. And then make sure to enable mono. And then because of the distortion, we've added some annoying high harmonics. You're going to enable the filter, select oscillator A and B, and then play around with the cutoff. A little bit of resonance. And this makes it way easier when it comes to mixing the beat in the end. Then we're adding this simple bass line, which is basically following the root notes of the chord progression. Which is so incredibly simple. But you could also do exactly the same using the 3 OSC. So for example, this one, -24, -12, and then play around with the second one. And you're also creating a sine wave which is very similar to the one we've created in Serum. Step 4, adding some percussive loops. Then we're adding some effects and drum rolls, and all these samples are included in my AFROBEATs Infinity drum kit. So we're adding a drum roll with a typical AFROBEAT clap. So for example, this drum loop and clap are also included in the AFROBEATs Infinity drum kit, and make sure to switch it up using another drum loop. Which could be very simple, but it just makes a beat a little bit more interesting when listening to it. Then I've used some saxophone sample from the Jackass sample pack from Beats. Big shout out to Beats. I love using the samples. So this is a saxophone sample also in C minor. Sounds so cool when you use it in your Afrobeat. Highly recommend getting this pack or using very similar samples like this. So for example, productions from KLP, which is one of the top Afrobeat producers, also uses a lot of samples like this. So I highly recommend adding samples like this to your Afrobeat. How to mix your Afrobeat. So within the mixer, I separated my kick and bass, my main drums, my percussions, my toms, the saxophone, and the main melodies. And this makes it way easier to mix your beat within the project. So don't make it too messy, because then it will get very difficult. So for example, in the main drums, make sure to remove some low frequencies so that it doesn't collide with your kick. I've widened up the sound using stereo separation. Then I've used a subtle tube with 20% of drive just to compress the whole signal, and this gives you way more headroom when mastering the beat in the end. And then just another compressor using a transient control preset. So definitely don't overcompress them. This is crucial when it comes to creating those beats. So as you can see, this gives me way more headroom without losing any dynamics or transients. And then on the toms, they contain a lot of low frequencies, and you also don't want them to collide with the kick. So remove everything beyond around 100 Hz. And then I've used a warm tape with 20% of drive to also compress the sound a little bit without using dynamics. And then add some panning to the sounds, just the way you like it. So you spread out the whole signal, and it's way easier to listen to individual elements without playing it all on mono. And mastering your Afrobeat is just as simple as it is. Just mix it the way you like it, because you don't want to make any huge adjustments to your mastering chain. As I said many times before, Afrobeat is a really dynamic style, so you don't want to overcompress it in the end. So again, I've just added a clean tube with 20% of drive just to compress the signal again. And this in the end gives you way more headroom without noticing it. Then I've used this transparent final master preset from the plugin, which is called the Glue. And this one just catches the peaks. So when limiting it, we don't just limit it, I prefer compressing the peaks. And then I'm using this exciter, an imager, and a maximizer. And that's it. It's so simple. It all comes down to mixing your beat properly. If you're interested in a free sample pack, make sure to check out the Afro Science drum kit. It contains over 100 free sounds. Highly recommend it. The link will be in the description. And if you're interested in the sounds which I've used in this tutorial, definitely go and download the free AFROBEATs Infinity drum kit. The link will also be in the description. And with all this being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and let's listen to the final result.